Hey guys, I've had a pretty busy January. I'm just trying to get through all of my clients' year-end stuff and get stuff sent to accountants. So I thought today I'd kind of take you along that process and exactly how I got all the year-end statements and everything done for one of my clients. So some of the things I'm going to go over are what you actually have to send to your accountant, or to your client's accountant rather, and then also all the tasks I did to kind of proofread that profit and loss and the balance sheet, and a couple other tasks that I had to do this year. As well as at the end, I'm going to go through the 10 questions that the accountant asked me last year. So hopefully that will help you, maybe, because I'm trying to be more proactive this year too, to think about like, oh, those are the questions that she asked me, so maybe I can do things ahead of time to fix, any of those issues or any of those question areas. So first of all, what should you send to an accountant? And if it's not clear, these are my bookkeeping clients, and they each have their own accountant. And that's typically how it is. Occasionally people have asked me to recommend an accountant, and I totally can because I know multiple accountants now. But usually they already have an accountant like when I take them on as a bookkeeping client. So the first thing the accountant needs, is access to your Quickbooks. So however you want to do that, you can definitely, usually when I'm first meeting an accountant, I'll email them and I'll ask them what things they would like or how it is the easiest way to communicate and that type of thing. So usually the easiest way to do it is to send them an accountant login to the Quickbooks Online file of your clients. I have come across accountants that are not well versed in QuickBooks Online, and in that case, I sometimes would make PDFs of the different reports that they need, probably a profit and loss detail and a profit and loss and a balance sheet, maybe a balance sheet detail, I don't know, and then just send those to them. Hopefully your accountant will be able to figure out QuickBooks Online, so they need access to that. Then they need your client's bank statements. So my accountant just wants December because she just compares, the end of the year to make sure it matches up. You can double check with yours to make sure how many they need. And the other two things I send are a notes page. So sometimes just little things need explanations or if I have questions. Then also there's a furniture detail page. So this accountant, I'm going to talk about it more in a little while, but she really likes to have a clear picture of what furniture was bought that year so she can depreciate it. So that's kind of the overview of what you're going to need to compile, but the main bulk of the time is going to be spent really looking into that profit and loss statement and making sure that it's perfect and it's ready to go for the year end and for your accountant. And this did take me a good considerable amount of time. I think it probably took me so say each month I spend I don't know how many hours, maybe 5 hours. So this probably took me, I said 3 times as long. I don't know if it took me that long. I don't know if it took me 15 hours, but I spent multiple days kind of going through everything. And I did a few extra tasks that I'm going to talk about. But the point of me saying that is that make sure if you're charging a fixed rate that you include extra stuff, like the year-end stuff or the little problems that you're going to be fixing or things that you're going to be tweaking, because yes, every month it might not take you super duper long, but probably eventually that time will be spent on those clients' books. So make sure you are charging fairly for your time and effort. All right, so I kind of broke it up into 4 different kinds of tasks. The first one is reconcile December. So I don't know if that's obvious, but make sure you finish importing all the transactions and categorizing them, and then reconcile December so you're ready to look at the whole year as a finished product. And the second thing is I have a few little categories that I tend to drop things in, drop transactions in if I have questions about them. So ask my accountant is definitely one of them. So I did have about 10 things in there, and I try to do that every month. And I think they were from maybe the past 3 months, just because, I'm not perfect at getting it done every single month, but I was able to get through those 10 transactions pretty easily. And that could be a vendor that I don't know if I don't know where to categorize that expense. It could be a check I have questions about, or sometimes if there's a really large expense, I'll put it in there and just double check with the owner that it's correct. I think usually they have merchant fees for running credit cards, and usually it's a couple $100, but then there was one that was $1,500, and so I was kind of that seemed weird that it was so large, and so I just wanted to double check with the owner that that was correct. Another little category I have that might not be best practice, but I have a little category that's called checks to check. So if I have any checks that are weird or I can't identify what they're for, I'll put them in there just because I want to kind of keep those separate. I could put them in Ask My Accountant too, but I have that other little category I use. So you feel free to do things like that, make little systems that work for you in your workflow and your process. And then I also check the outstanding check. So when you go to reconcile, I'm not going to explain this in super detail, but it checks all the all the green little check marks. And then sometimes there's checks that haven't been cashed yet. So they're like the outstanding checks. So at the end of the year, I just like to, and you could definitely do it more frequently. And depending on how many checks your client writes, you might need to do it more frequently. But I definitely do it at the end of the year, and I make sure, like, is that a check from like last February that I think was already cashed, or do I need to follow up with that vendor, or was there some kind of mistake? And this happened a few times in terms of like maybe that check is already in the bank account, but for some reason it didn't match to the check that was, that I input in QuickBooks. So that might be confusing depending on how experienced you are as a bookkeeper, but basically just check any outstanding checks. And I didn't yet mention, I'd love it if you subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up. My website is finepoints.biz, and I have a free masterclass and a free checklist that are really popular that you guys might like. So for the bulk of this, which is going through the profit and loss in detail, I'm going to go into QuickBooks and let you know exactly what I did. And the process I used this year was, this is my ruler. I actually printed out a profit and loss, and then I also had it up on my computer screen, and I watched this accountant that I used to work with always use a ruler to like go through, to like look at each line individually, because it helps you just like look at each line. But I like to have it digitally also, because you can click into each one of the things and see what is in, like, if you're like rent, it's like $10,000, you can click into it and see each transaction on the computer. So my process this year that I was trying out is I had both open, and then if I had a question, I would mark it down on my piece of paper. So if like a rent check was missing, I would just make a note or highlight it on my piece of paper so that I could know to go back to it. And I also had a Word document open like the whole time I was working, and I started jotting down questions for myself, questions or like to follow up on, questions for the accountant, and then questions for the business owner. And don't forget to stick around after the screen record, because I'm going to go through all those true and real life questions from my accountant. All right, I'm in the sample company now, and my favorite thing to do for this client especially is to do, I'm going to need last year, and I like to do it by month. And this sample company unfortunately doesn't have stuff in the beginning of, it only starts in September. But you can kind of get the idea of what I'm trying to do. So first I start with the income. So all the way to this total income is what I'm going to proofread first. And basically I just go through and see if anything looks like wrong or out of place. And one good thing to check for income in particular is there any like negatives like this one, you're like, wait a second, that is money coming out, but it was recorded in the income. And so, you can look at that and be like, okay, yeah, that's a discount, so that makes sense. And then again, anything that looks weird, I personally usually don't put stuff in these headers right here. So like in my profit and loss, if anything was in this header under landscaping services, I would take it out and then I would put it under one of the things down below. You can also look at things that are really different. So this right here in December, they had way more income, which hopefully is good, but you can make sure that that's not a mistake. Same with this. They only paid 131. They only got 131, and then they made $2,000 in December. So something happened that was different in December. And if you know that's correct, then that's great. And you just kind of follow the same process with the expense half of the profit and loss statement. So you can click into any of these expenses. As I mentioned, there might be multiple in each of these months, or you can click into the main thing and you can be like, okay, yeah, we're spending everything at Tanya's nursery. That makes sense. If there was something totally different, like a computer store or something, you might be like, oh, that's in the wrong place, so I would need to fix that. As well as in utilities, you can kind of look at those and make sure, like probably rent, you're going to pay the same amount every single month. So in my clients, it would be like 900, 900, 900, 900, 900, 900, always to the same vendor. Similar with gas and electric, it's probably going to be every month. So check vendors, check amounts. If there's an income in here, make sure that is where you want it. And I do try to do these checks, month by month as I go along, but I just feel like the end of the year, I just have like a really good overall picture of everything. And I just kind of look at it with a fresh, really detailed set of eyes. All right, so just kind of a recap of those tasks. We reconciled December, we went through the extra little buckets to check, and then we proofread the profit and loss. The fourth thing I want you to do is go through your balance sheet and kind of do a similar proofread to that. This does not take me as long just because usually the balance sheet I feel like is a little shorter. but you want to make sure that nothing looks off on the balance sheet and also that the bank balances match what is in your bank. So compare it to the December statements. And then some of the extra tasks that I did this year that actually took me a little extra time, but I wanted to do them, was I made changes to the chart of accounts. So I really love now how this client's chart of accounts, or how their, profit and loss is set up, because I put them in kind of like 4 categories for the expenses. And the first category is fixed expenses. So I know every month that's going to be about the same. And then I have variable expenses, and then I have annual expenses, because I kind of wanted to pull those out because they have like 5 or 6 things that are really big things that come only once a year. And so I wanted to just be able to visualize that and track that a little better, because it was kind of confusing when it was all mixed in with everything else. And then the last section I have is payroll, which is a big one. So I tweaked the chart of accounts. There were some accounts I needed to make inactive that I wasn't using anymore. So I did all that. I also worked on the balance sheet. So there were some old transactions even from before I got here that were kind of like messy on the balance sheet. So I was able to get some help on those, and I actually did journal entries and zeroed them out. So that's a little bit more of a complex thing that if you're just starting out, you might want to get help or get advice on. And I also researched and figured out how to better put in the business loan. So the business has an outstanding loan that they've been paying off for like 5 years or something. And so I just didn't have that quite right on the balance sheet. And so I did some research because it was something that I don't do that often. It's a little, I would say maybe a little more advanced depending on what type of businesses you're working with. So I fixed that. And then I also took a look at my payroll liabilities section on the balance sheet, because there was something that I was basically categorizing as an expense and it should have been a liability. So I figured that out halfway through the year, and then I didn't deal with it right away, but eventually I just used the reclassified tool in the accountant tools and just did them all at once and stuck them in that liability account. So basically just stuff like that. You probably have little things in your to-do list that maybe you didn't have time to do like during the year, and just get them all done now before you send off your nice, clean, beautiful reports. I love chatting with you guys in the comments too and getting any of your input, so definitely leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, maybe what your process is, if there's any to-dos that you do that I haven't added to this list. So now I'm gonna go over the questions from my accountant, because I thought that might help you guys out. And I did change the names and stuff, so it's all confidential. So the first question they asked is, do we still have that IOLTA account? So this is specific for lawyers. It's a liability account, or like a trust account where clients can put money in. So basically my answer to that was, we still have the account, but it's not recorded in QuickBooks. And there's different schools of thought if you're a bookkeeper for lawyers on if you should put it in QuickBooks or not. Currently, it is not in QuickBooks. So I just wanted to let the accountant know that yes, we still have that liability as an overall asset to the business, but it is not showing up in the reports that I gave her. And then she asked if we still had a petty cash account with $25 in it. This is not something I really manage at all. There is a way, I think, that you can track petty cash in QuickBooks, but I haven't bothered to. And so I think just she needed to know, basically. And so I just double checked with the owner, and he said, yes, we still have that petty cash account. All right, number 3, she wanted to make sure that the furniture and assets were separated out from the office supplies, because she said she couldn't always tell what she needed to depreciate, I believe. And this accountant, I think I've mentioned it a couple of times, she's pretty strict on this point, or it's like one of her things that she really wants to get right, which I'm perfectly happy. I like it when she's detail oriented. And one change I did make this year in 2021 was that I tracked those furniture purchases and those computer purchases more carefully. And I did hook up the QuickBooks Online to our Amazon business account. I have a video about how I did that. The thumbnail looks like this, and it even has a link to the Amazon listing for that. So it's really easy to tell what specifically was bought in those items from Amazon. All right, number 4, she asked a question about this category that I had called design build. And that was a new thing that I hadn't come across before, but my client was renting a new place, and they had to spend some money to fix it up ahead of time. And it was kind of like a complicated contract where the landlord was paying some and they were paying some, and my client was paying some. So anyways, basically the accountant just wanted to clarify that that was leasehold improvements, which I said, yes, it was. All right, number 5, we just were chatting about the PPP loan that we'd had that year, and that was like a one-time thing, but I just want to make sure I recorded it correctly and she was aware of it. All right, and a lot of the following questions are kind of about like in the payroll realm or have to do with employee checks. All right, number 6. Oh yeah, so Joe was issued a severance check when he left the company, and the owner just wrote him a check for that. And I think should have gone through payroll, or at least the accountant was just trying to figure out why we wrote that check and how it should be categorized. So I just kind of told her the situation, and she was able to record it correctly on her side. All right, number 7 is B's check was off by $1,000. And what happened in that case was that the bank actually misread it. You know, when you put it in the little ATM, it was $1,000 off. And so that made it look like we had paid $1,000, I think, extra on payroll, or no, yeah, $1,000 extra on payroll. So I had to call the bank and get it reversed, and then we got that $1,000 back. But unfortunately, it happened in December, so it was like over, we were missing that money when the year closed. So I was happy that the accountant just clarified that situation. All right, the next one was that, oh yeah, someone had gotten a advance on their paycheck, and the owner just wrote them a check again, which is not what you're supposed to do apparently. This will probably happen with your clients too. They'll just be like doing stuff, and that's not their priority to like think about how this is affecting the books and the bookkeeper. They'll just be doing things because it's like part of their business day and they just need to get stuff done. And so sometimes you have to kind of like figure out or like clean up a little bit of a mess that they created. Oh yeah, it was an advance, and then she didn't see it on the payroll side, so I just had to locate it and figure out where it was and tell the accountant. So some of these questions I need to research and find the answer to, and some of them I needed to ask the owner. All right, and then Rick had a check in January that did not come through payroll, so she was wondering what that was. That was a bonus check, and the employee lost the check, and so it had to be rewritten. And so in hindsight, I realized I should have dealt with that a little bit differently. I should have voided the first check and then made it probably a December date, like, because we did write the check in December, and so it should have been an expense in December, and then when it was cash, it would come through in January. So that was just a little bit of a weird like situation mix up, but it was pretty easy to sort out. And the last question was, what will the pension match be for 2020? So for that year, how much do they match? I think that was for retirement. I don't know. I don't think they have pension. Anyways, but I had to check with the owner to make sure that I had the correct match number. Thank you if you stuck it out all the way to the end. I really appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully this was helpful to just see kind of like some real life stuff that I'm doing as a bookkeeper. Definitely give this video a thumbs up if you made it to the end. I really appreciate you, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. Thank you so much. Bye.